This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. President Trump blames the media for the anger in America. Others blame him. This all comes in the wake of suspicious packages found in several cities across the country. Police found one overnight in New York City addressed to actor Robert De Niro. Another was addressed to former Vice President Joe Biden's home and found in a Delaware post office, also overnight. Wednesday, the Secret Service recovered packages addressed to First Lady Hillary Clinton and President Barack Obama. Both were mailed to their homes. A suspicious package was also sent to the Time Warner Center in New York City. Police evacuated the building after it was found in the mailroom. Investigators say that package also contained a white powdery substance, and that's not the end of it. Packages were also sent to congressional leaders' offices in Florida and California. The FBI and Homeland Security departments are in the middle of a full-scale investigation as the nation watches to see if more packages will surface. Gary Lane is here now with more on what's behind these bombing attempts. So, Gary, none have exploded, but some are wondering, are these still successful, if you will?
Well, I think they're successful if they're instilling fear in the society, and that often is what many terrorists, domestic and foreign, are after, is to make people afraid. We don't know at this point if that was the reason or the motivation behind these bombs, Ephraim. We won't know that until the person or people responsible are caught by the FBI and other police law enforcement agencies. But at this point, we just don't know what the motive is.
Now, you've covered things like this, like the bombing in Paris. What have you seen in terms of what motives are?
Well, the motives in Paris, obviously, that was ISIS. ISIS wanted to make a statement. They wanted to say, look, we're here. We can strike at will in Paris or any large city in Europe. And this may have been revenge when that happened several years ago in Paris, because ISIS had warned, you attack us on our land, we're going to go after you on your land. So I think, Ephraim, in those cases with ISIS and so forth, in many of those instances, it has been either revenge or to make a statement.
Experts are saying that the packages were intended to create, as you mentioned, panic and fear, perhaps heading into the midterm elections. Have you seen something like this before?
Well, these were very crude devices. I mean, if the intent was to actually harm someone, they were novices. They didn't do a very good job at that, because if you were going to harm someone, you would want a device that would be connected some way, the triggering device, to a package or to a box, so when you opened it, it would explode. That was not the case here. The wiring was on the outside, not the inside. Most pipe bombs, if someone knows what they're doing, is professional, they wouldn't wire it that way. So this seems like it was making a statement, maybe to instill fear in advance of the election.
What do you think Christians should be doing to make a difference in what looks like right now a time of great fear and hatred?
Well, obviously, we need to be praying as Christians. First and foremost, get on your knees and pray. God, protect our country as we approach this election. Protect every polling place. Protect our leaders, our politicians, whether we agree with them or not. We want your divine protection on this nation, your blessing on this nation, and then may we elect godly and righteous leaders in this upcoming election. That would be first and foremost. Ephraim, I would say beyond that, go and vote. We can't really influence the culture if we're sitting on our hands, sitting at home, and not going out to the polling places.
What advice would you give to leaders on both sides in terms of what should be said and what they should be leading the country in right now?
Look, just cool it. That's my advice. Look to the example of Ronald Reagan. He and Tip O'Neill, they were on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but yet they met, they had dinner together, and as Tip O'Neill told Ronald Reagan, he said, look, we can be political foes during the day. At night, we're buddies. So let's just chill and relax a little bit.
Are you hopeful that that unity is going to happen?
I'm praying for that. I'm not so hopeful.
All right, Gary Lane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As many as 800 U.S. troops could be headed to the southern border to help with the Migrant Caravan on its way there. CBN News has confirmed the Department of Homeland Security asked the Department of Defense to provide troops for logistical support, but they would not be carrying guns or making any arrests. CBN News contributor Chuck Holton is in Mexico covering that caravan.
All right, so I want to try to clarify some of what you've been hearing in the news media about this caravan moving north into the United States. First of all, the people in this caravan are not being paid to join the caravan. Their payoff comes when they get to the U.S. They are, however, being facilitated and enabled by groups like the UN, other NGOs, and by church groups who are feeding them and providing them support on their journey north. Now, the other questions have been, are there felons, are there bad guys in this group? And I can tell you, it didn't take me long to find 4 or 5 right away who are absolute felons that are coming north to try to get back into the United States. Here's one of them.
Ha visitado, sí.
¿Cuántas veces?
4.
4 veces. Pero ¿cuánto tiempo has pasado adentro de los Estados Unidos?
A veces 2 meses, a veces
2 meses.
Sí, a veces 1 mes. Así.
No mucho.
Sí, no muchos presos ahí. Ahí en los centros de detención.
Now, the other issue that we're seeing is people are asking about whether or not there are what you would call exotics, that is, people who are not from Central America that are joining this caravan. And let me just show you what I found a few minutes ago. Hey, Somalia! ¿Cómo están? ¿Todo bien? ¿Cuándo van a salir?
No Spanish.
Oh, no speak Spanish.
I speak English.
English. When are you going to the United States?
I don't know. When I have a chance, maybe week, day.
What are you waiting for?
We want to take some rest. You know, we retire from the road.
I'm sorry, what?
We want to take some rest, you know.
Oh, you want to rest a little bit. Where did you start?
I started probably Brazil, you know.
Oh, you went all the way to Brazil and came up from Brazil. Did you walk through the Darien?
There's some road we must walk, you know, to cross it by walk.
Now, lastly, it bears pointing out that there are some people who are saying, this is too difficult, it's too hard, and I want to go home. And I found 2 people like that yesterday and actually helped them get back to the border of Guatemala. Take a look at what they had to say.
Look, it was really hard. There are lots of people in the group, some good, some bad. While we were all sleeping together, someone took my phone. I decided to go back because of my daughter. Carrying her while we walked, I became so tired, and the sun and everything affected us both a lot. My dream has always been to go to the United States, because it's so beautiful, to work and improve the lives of me and my family, and more than anything to give my daughter a better future.
A lot more people would probably choose to go back home if it wasn't being made easier to get to the United States by a lot of well-meaning groups who are helping these migrants. And we can know one thing for sure, and that is that there will be a lot more caravans behind this one because everybody is ready to take advantage of the infrastructure being created by this caravan. And so we have to think hard about how we're going to help these people, but also help ourselves. I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News from Tapachula, Mexico.
That's Chuck Holton following that story for us. We have new information in a story we're continuing to follow. Oregon dismissed criminal charges against the judge who says he was targeted for his Christian beliefs. Our Mark Martin joins us now with more on this story. Mark?
That's right, Ephraim. Now, the charges against Judge Vance Day stem from his time when he presided over the Marion County Veterans Treatment Court and also his interactions with a Navy SEAL who was a convicted felon and defendant in the court. Day was accused of allowing the SEAL to possess and control guns on 2 separate occasions. The charges were dropped because a key witness refused to testify at his trial. Day says the charges were politically motivated because of his unwillingness to perform gay marriages and punishment for his biblical views on marriage. The criminal charges, however, are just one side of what Day has gone through for more than 3 years. He also faces ethics violations and spoke about that with me by Skype.
So that case is technically over, and I remain suspended, if you will. But the Oregon State Bar wants to discipline me, and so I may get another hearing, and they're going to have to prove this case against me, which they cannot do. So maybe the United States Supreme Court will get a second shot at hearing this case.
A spokeswoman for the Oregon State Bar told the Statesman Journal that they are investigating 2 ethics complaints against Day, and if they find evidence related to misconduct, his case would go before a trial panel hearing instead of a jury trial. Ephraim?
What's his legal team think about this?
Good question. Now, they actually would prefer that this case, this ethics case, would go before an open court jury trial. They believe that there are safeguards associated with a trial by jury, and that's what they told that newspaper. Ephraim?
All right, so the story really still far from over.
Yes, very true.
All right, thanks, Mark. Cake maker Jack Phillips is hitting back at the Colorado Civil Rights Commission's latest effort to punish him. This time, it's for refusing to create a cake celebrating a gender transition. Phillips is suing the commission for going after him a second time with anti-Christian hostility. Attorneys with Alliance Defending Freedom filed a motion to stop the commission from taking action against Phillips while his own lawsuit against them proceeds in federal court. Coming up here on CBN NewsWatch, a harsh warning from Israel's prime minister for Hamas militants in the face of almost a year of riots. We've got that story when we come back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised painful blows against Hamas if it doesn't stop its violent protests. As Chris Mitchell reports now from Jerusalem, the threat comes after months of rioting along Israel's southern border.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel may choose a different way to confront Hamas's violence.
We're close to a different kind of action. This action will include very painful blows. If Hamas is smart, it will cease its fire and violent outbursts now.
Hamas-led riots began on March 30th. IDF spokesman Jonathan Conricus told CBN News Hamas plans events for different days. On Monday, it's the beach.
For instance, Mondays are always the naval riots, when they embark from the Gaza harbor and they try to breach into Israeli waters.
Friday is the weekly main event,
where an average of about 18,000 rioters gather in 6 different locations, trying to violently get across into Israel, becoming more and more violent. We see a clear escalation in violence in the weapons that they use. Last Friday, the most violent attempt, IEDs were placed by Palestinians on the fence, were detonated, and that blew a hole in the fence through which 20 or so Palestinians got in, and they tried to assault an IDF position. Hamas is actively pushing Palestinians towards the fence, really escalating the level of violence and trying to get Palestinians killed on the fence.
Ambassador Michael Oren addressed the Gaza situation to Christian journalists from around the world.
The demonstrator is the new missile. It's actually a better missile, because in most cases it's multi-usage, and they get the picture. They get the picture of innocent kids being killed by Israel, which causes the same type of damage. It erodes our national legitimacy.
Earlier, CBN News got a first-hand look at what Israeli soldiers have faced for more than half a year.
It's not legitimate and civilian riot. The leaders of the riot is Hamas, and they are trying to challenge us.
Hamas has also flown hundreds of arson balloons into Israel that burned thousands of acres of Israeli farmland. The goal of Hamas is to infiltrate into Israeli border communities to attack Israeli civilians.
It should be very clear to our enemies that there is a limit to the amount of violence that can be tolerated, to the amount of terror that is inflicted upon Israeli civilians. And of course, IDF has the tools and the capabilities to defend against those.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
55 people, many of them Christians, were killed in northern Nigeria following clashes between Christians and Muslim young people. The violence started at a market in Kaduna State when a mob of Muslims attacked a Christian business owner over a transaction dispute. It quickly spread to nearby neighborhoods where Muslims destroyed several Christian homes and businesses. They also burned a church. Hundreds of people have been killed this year in outbreaks of religious violence across Nigeria. Still ahead, why America is pulling out of a long-standing treaty with Russia and what it means for the nation today. President Trump plans to pull the United States out of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with Russia. It was an agreement in the 1980s designed to bring peace to the U.S. and allies in Europe and the Far East. CBN's national security correspondent Eric Gonzalez explains why the administration now wants out.
For years, the United States has claimed Russia has violated the INF Treaty for developing and deploying medium-range nuclear missiles. At a press conference in Moscow, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton said that the U.S. is withdrawing from the 30-year treaty.
This is not a subject that arose yesterday. This question of Russian violations is long and deep.
Bolton said a former withdrawal notice has yet to be filed, but he did refer to 6 years of U.S. State Department reports that showed Russia's violations. Prior to the announcement, Bolton said a variety of topics were discussed in meetings, including Russia's interference in U.S. elections.
I can say we're obviously monitoring the potential for foreign interference in our elections across the board very closely. We have 2 weeks to go until the election. I hope there isn't any meddling at all.
News reports out of Moscow claim Putin told Bolton he wants to continue a dialogue with President Trump.
Russia has not adhered to the agreement. This should have been done years ago. Until people come to their senses, we have more money than anybody else by far. We'll build it up.
Putin mentioned possibly meeting Trump on November 11th when the two leaders are in Paris to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. INF stands for Intermediate Nuclear Forces. The treaty was signed in 1987 by President Ronald Reagan and Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev when the two superpowers were trying to end the Cold War. Putin recently made what some are calling are troubling remarks about a possible nuclear war.
The aggressor should know that the retaliation is inevitable and they will be destroyed. And we will be the victims of aggression and rise to the heavens as martyrs, and they will just drop dead.
Hudson Institute senior fellow Richard Weiss feels by leaving this treaty, it opens up other lines of communication for both Russia and the United States.
President Trump is searching for an out-of-the-box approach to some of these issues, and he may want to consider having an arms control treaty with Russia that would include both the intermediate range missiles and the larger ones, but on the common ceiling. So Russia can keep the missile it's developing, but then they'd have just fewer of the longer range ones.
When a powerful earthquake struck Indonesia on September 28th, one plane still managed to take off from the Palu airport. The Indonesian pilot says his relationship with God opened his ears to divine instructions that saved him and all 148 passengers. CBN's Lucille Toulousan brings us his miracle story.
Because of who you are, I give you glory. Because of who you
Commercial pilot Ricoseta Mafela, a devout Christian, hums worship songs during his flights. But moments before the earthquake and tsunami hit Indonesia last month, he felt the urge to sing aloud.
Because of who you are. God seems like saying, hey, just praise me and worship me.
Captain Mafela said he saw nothing unusual as he approached Palu that day, other than strong winds that prompted a split decision to circle before landing. That delayed him landing by 9 minutes. As passengers departed and Mafela prepared for his next flight, he heard the voice again.
Get out of this place. Depart early.
Captain Mafela wondered if it was just his imagination or something else. Regardless, he obeyed what he had heard and took off 3 minutes earlier than the scheduled departure time. That decision literally saved him and his 148 passengers.
The quake started on the Donggala area 5:55 p.m. I pushed back at 5:52. The wave of the earthquake reached Palu 7.4, 7.7. It's just exactly after my liftoff. Yes.
Those 3 minutes were crucial. After Captain Mafela's plane was safely airborne, this control tower started to cave in because of the strong earthquake, forcing air traffic controller Antonius Agong to jump from the 4th floor. He was a hero. Unfortunately, he died due to internal injuries. At the time, Captain Mafela and his passengers had no idea what was taking place below them. Later, Mafela realized his cell phone camera had captured a view of waves starting to form into tsunamis that struck central Sulawesi.
Those runway crack behind me, and the deep is around 1.5 to 2 meters. Behind the runway, that's where the liquefactions only happen on my departure time.
Captain Mafela is glad he listened and obeyed.
Oh God, thank you so much. God reveals everything. If you are late even just 1 or 2 seconds, it could be a disaster. I don't need to prove that God is alive. I don't need to prove that God is here. I've seen it. It's more than enough for me.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Palu, Indonesia.
Still ahead, another major milestone for the Jesus Film Project and its mission to take the gospel to the world in every language. The Jesus Film is now in 1,700 languages. The newest translation is Czech Itolo. People in the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific speak it. The ministry is planning to add several dozen more translations by 2025. Campus Crusade for Christ founder Bill Bright began the Jesus Film Project back in 1981. The goal is to distribute the film to every nation, tribe, people, and tongue, helping them to see and hear the story of Jesus in the language they best understand. Nice to see the gospel spread. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about always at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you join us again right here next time. Have a great day, everybody.